I've never done good things. I've never done bad things.
Hello cheap things, my name's Lee, I'm from Huddersfield, and this is my Bowie Confessional. So question 1, when did I first become aware of David Bowie? It's really quite simple. It's a bit of an odd one, but it was that. Labyrinth. I wrote a post for the I Love This Photo section not so long ago, and quite a long post about Labyrinth. And David Bowie was this little 8-bit graphic that appeared on the screen. I didn't quite know what he was or who he was, and it was only when my mum saw him that she pointed out that he was the same person that was on that. Look at that, a 12-inch version of Dancing in the Street, because frankly 7's not enough. So that was for me. That was David Bowie. He was a cartoon. He was the Goblin King. So this was 1985-86. Yeah, it was a damn good game. My mates made nothing of David Bowie. David was invisible at my school. So this is years sort of 1986 to 1992. So as far as David was gone, so obviously Serious Moonlight Tours on, albums were into Never Let Me Down, and then by the end of that period we're getting into Tin Machine. So for a 12, 13-year-old boy, you could argue that Never Let Me Down or Tin Machine isn't really your jumping in point. To me, David Bowie was the man from Dancing in the Street, Jareth from Labyrinth, the guy that did the voice for the Snowman, and I'd seen clips of him in Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. So he really wasn't this sort of huge rock star. I knew he was quite involved with sort of Live Aid, but he really wasn't impacting me. And at my school, we lived out in the middle of nowhere. There was no record store, so you couldn't go and buy sort of tapes and CDs and vinyl very easily. So we basically passed around bootlegs of now that's what I call Music 13, and if you look at the listings for that, you'll see the horrendous tracks that I listened to in my teenage years. So it really wasn't a chance to get to grips with David Bowie. My first David Bowie gig, and indeed my only David Bowie gig, was the 2003 reality tour at Manchester, where I think I've learnt over the past sort of few months that there was quite a few of the cheap things there. If only we'd known, we could have had a meet-up. I didn't know he was touring. That's how blind I was, and my wife bought them as a surprise. She got on the internet using a very old dial-up modem and hooked a couple of seats, and there he was. And at the time I remember thinking, you know, that was a great concert. I've seen David Bowie. And it's only now, all these years later, that I think what a great concert reality was, what a great tour it was. And if you think of the songs, if I said to you now, what songs would you like to see David Bowie sing? They're all there. They were on reality. You had Life on Mars, you had Ziggy Stardust, you had Suffragette City, you had Rebel Rebel, and a whole host of other ones, that he used to drop in from time to time. So that was my one and only David Bowie concert, and it was a good one. I'm going to cheat a little bit here. Just bear with me. It's that one. Look, even still in its bag. Bowie at the Beeb. I know it's a bit of a cheat. The reason I like it so much is that it tells a greater story of David's progression from Uncle Arthur, Please Mr. Gravedigger, and all things like that, through to Aladdin Sane. If you take the albums Man Who Sold the World and Hunky Dory and Ziggy and Aladdin Sane, you get a very definite step. Whereas with Bowie at the Beeb, you get the intermediate points where the set list is half Ziggy, half Hunky Dory. So he's still doing Moon Age Daydream, but he's throwing Amsterdam in there as well. And you've you really do see the development. And of course, when you about halfway through, you've got that amazing John Peel session with, frankly, half of London, it would seem, that's on there. People like Dana Gillespie, Mark Carr Pritchard, and Jeff McCormack, of course, are all in there. And it's a stonking recording. So I know it's a bit of a cheat, but Bowie of the Beeb is my favourite Bowie album. Did I ever meet David Bowie? No. I have worked in 2 venues that he played, but that doesn't really count, so no. I'm not a big collector of memorabilia, mainly because I haven't got the space, and certainly for David Bowie these days, I haven't got the budget either. What I do like to collect Bowie is Bowie books. I like to learn about Bowie and different stories about Bowie and different sort of facets of the character, which is one of being the great things of the podcast and being a part of Cheap Things, is it really gives you gives a voice to people that you really don't hear from that often. So I'm just going to share a few of my, I guess, collectibles, what I find books, and some that you may not know. One is that, which is the Thin White Book. This is sold by Aylesbury Friars. We'll hopefully we might be able to pop a few links down below, and you can buy this little piece. It was sold to raise money for the statue at Aylesbury, but it really does highlight the points in David's career where he did those really, really important gigs, and again the transition into Ziggy Stardust. And there's so many good stories in here about him and about his character and about the change that happened from when he became David, the guy that you could go down the pub with, to David, the guy that you weren't going to get anywhere near in a million years. And it's a really interesting read. Another one that I really like, and it gets mentioned a lot on here, of course, is Bowie and Hutch, which again, cracking story. John Hutchinson is now getting a lot more credit, I think, for his work with David Bowie. A lot of these vinyl releases that are coming out at the moment rightfully have John in there. I hope he's getting a pound or two as well to buy, keep him in guitar strings anyway. So it's a really good book. Treat yourself, because there's some really good stories in there, and there's a lot of facsimiles in there from information about the Ziggy Stardust era, and it's almost got a fall of the Roman Empire feel about it. You can start to see the walls collapsing around the Ziggy party, and John really details it quite well in some of the hotels they're staying in, some of the things that are going on, some of the tales that he tells are really quite eye-opening, and a lot of the stuff in there is new, certainly new to me, purely because I think John is one of those forgotten characters in the Bowie story. They sort of think he disappears at the end of Space Oddity and he doesn't come back, but of course, we know he was right there until that final show at Hammersmith, and he was the man that was told to wait until Bowie told them that they were all fired. So he's an important guy, and it's a good book. But going on, this book is out of print, but you will find it around. Stardust, again, it's a Bowie story, but it's written or co-written by Tony Zinetta, obviously Bowie's tour manager, part of the main man entourage. And carrying on from what I said about John's book, having the fall of the Ziggy Empire, this book, Stardust, really does go into it in a lot more detail, about what was happening behind the scenes on Main Man and how the different offices were working. So if you like the Ziggy period, and who doesn't like the Ziggy period, and how the Main Man machine was working or really not working, it's a cracking book. And it's also one of the best books I've read that really details the problems with Bowie's finances and how he was basically just getting done over. If that part of Bowie's life interests you, Stardust, you'll find it on second-hand book repositories. If we can drop some stuff in the show notes, I'll see if I can put an ISBN or something like that. It really is worth a look. My favourite Bowie story, it has to be in a clown suit. I mean, is there a better story in the world ever? I mean, it should be taught in schools. I can appreciate there's a small language issue here, but if you no idea what I mean by in a clown suit, then you need to go back to the A to Z podcasts and have a listen. And it really is just one of the greatest things in the world. I guess this might be the answer for most people. There is a story that I know about Bowie. I know the origin of the story, but I don't know how it works out. And this is in Eric Idle's autobiography, or sortobiography as he calls it. We know that David at one point had a stab at trying to get a Ziggy Stardust musical launched. And according to Eric Idle in his biography, he asked Eric Idle to work on it. And I would love to know the story behind that. How on earth do you nail Ziggy Stardust and Eric Idle together? Spam-A-Lot with Ziggy Stardust? It just doesn't sound right. Anyway, Eric Idle's autobiography, nice book if you like Monty Python's, but there's a whole chapter in there about his relationship with David Bowie and his friendship with David Bowie. And again, a couple of things in there that I'd not heard before, so I won't spoil them for you. But if you fancy a chuckle, it's a good one to get.
BBC News at 7:30. It's been announced in the past hour that David Bowie, one of rock music's most influential singers, has died. He was 69.
I was in bed. The alarm clock woke me up. It was the 7:30 Radio 2 news, and it was Maura Stewart. And we had a busy day on. It was a work day. And I remember trying to put a sock on. And I remember just standing and listening and watching the radio. My wife was talking to me about hair straighteners or something, bathing the children. And I said, I'm sorry, I've just got to hold you there. I think she's just said David Bowie's died. And I just sort of sat on the bed and listened to the lot of it. Like we all did. And then watched the day unfold as various people were asked their opinion, and it was an interesting day. It was obviously a very sad day, and a surprising day. You know, Black Star had only just been released. You know, perhaps this was we were going to get a bit more. Maybe we'd see him perform live again, and of course it wasn't going to be that way. It's easy with hindsight to now look at it retrospectively and say, yeah, it was never going to happen. But, you know, Black Star had sort of really given so much hope that this was going to happen, particularly with a bit of a new direction. And there's various stories that saying he was planning to do a couple of little gigs with the Black Star band, but, you know, that was never going to happen. So it was a bit of a shock. It was a depressing day. For a Bowie fanatic, I suppose, like the rest of us cheap things, the stories that came out after that point are the stories that only really come out when someone has passed away. So it was a chance for people that had known him to come out of the woodwork and have their say, without fear of upsetting him or stepping on people's toes. So you know, there was some really nice stories floating about, but not a good day, was it? I can't believe we have to leave this on that question. I mean, this is, you know, talk about ending on a high. Blimey, surely I can think of another one. Okay, I can't bear us to leave on this question, so I'm cheating very much here. So my question to me is, what piece of Bowie memorabilia, history, archive would I like to see? And there's an interview with Bowie where he talks about the early days where he apparently changed his name to Tom Jones. So this is before we got to David Bowie, so it's Davy Jones to David Bowie, and in the middle there is Tom Jones. And he said he had some photos printed. Now, I've never seen one. This could be one of Mr. Bowie's little tongue-in-cheek jokes, but I would love to know, has anyone ever seen the Tom Jones promotional cards? Because to me, it's just one of those other things that in his life at that point was just going wrong. You know, you release your first album and some bugger releases Sgt. Pepper on the same day. I mean, you give up and go home, wouldn't you? You know, you change your name and some Welsh crooner's doing the green, green grass of home round the corner. It's not a good thing for David, but if anyone knows anything about that, I'd love to see it. So anyway, I hope that's a bit of a cheerier question to finish on. But thank you, Cheap Things. Thank you for listening. And do what I've done. Post your video. Let's hear it. Let's see what you've got. And let's have a chat and see what's in the archives. Take care.